Lesson 16, Federalism and Politics, Chapter 4, Section 4. Federalism and Public Policy. Now see, policy is a stated course of action. The example we can give here that's very easy for all of us to follow is a principal will establish a policy oftentimes where students do not get to park in the teacher's parking lot. This is a conscious, deliberate way of handling issues. So you park in the teacher's parking lot, boom, you've violated the policy. Your student handbook you were given was a list of school policies. Now, public policy, the policy of the government, is state and federal policy. So when you hear the word public policy, recognize that this is something the government does. And federalism affects public policy in a big way. It decides how and where policies are made. So who gets to decide? Is it going to be the state government? Is it going to be the federal government? And it also places limits on policy making. Remember some of those powers that were denied, the denied powers to the federal government, the denied powers to the state government? Now, the great thing about federalism and how it affects public policy is new ideas can easily develop in a federal system. You have 50 states, you have thousands of local governments, and all of them serve as testing grounds for new policy. Examples the book gives you. Georgia, 18-year-olds get to vote. This started in Georgia, and later on it becomes the 26th Amendment. Colorado, 1976, they start setting sunset laws, which basically it was set up to where agencies annually were reviewed to see whether or not the agency needed to be used in the future. If it was decided with the sunset law that there was no need for the agency, it would go away. The idea is to prevent waste in government. In California, air pollution laws were established before national air pollution laws were established, and California air pollution laws were used as the model for the national laws. 1967, Florida, they established open meetings laws called sunshine laws, which means that government officials have to have open meetings. And so the open meetings laws became national laws as well. And the federal government can innovate as well. Civil rights is an area where the federal government has innovated a great deal. There was a great deal of resistance to civil rights legislation on the part of the states. The example, again, that we've used in another PowerPoint is the Little Rock school situation. Federalism and political parties. Rival political parties enhance federalism. Basically, it weakens both the state and local governments. It creates an opportunity for the people to get more involved. Federalism means party competition doesn't become a winner-take-all situation, so there's less risk of a party monopoly of power. There's also less risk of basically a party being absolutely paranoid and thinking they have to do something extreme to maintain any kind of power. An example of how monopolies don't happen in a federal system is how the Democrats lost the majority of presidential elections from 1952 to 2000, and yet they had a congressional majority for most of those years. Because even if you're losing at the national level, you can still win at the local or the state level. And that's one of the cool things about federalism. Political participation. Another thing I like about federalism personally is that it increases the possibility that your political participation will actually have a practical effect. That includes more points of access to leaders, and includes more points of access to shape elections. So you have opportunities to discuss policy matters with your state legislator, with your congressman, U.S. congressman, and you can go through the state courts, you can go through the federal courts to try to get a change made. And also when it comes to changing leaders, because that's what we're doing with shaping elections, you have more opportunities to basically influence others to help you choose leaders that you prefer. And there are so many opportunities to affect change in the political system because you can work at the federal, the state, or even the local level. You have an increased opportunity, therefore, to influence policy. The lack of party discipline means that it's easier to get political leaders to follow kind of local interests, even if their party opposes that position. And you are allowed to vote for leaders and vote directly on issues. In our federal system, for example, recently the people in our school district voted on passing a bond, and it passed to help fund a lot of construction around the school district. And we get to vote on things for the city, vote on things for the county. There are also things like state referendums and state initiatives, where in the case of state initiatives, people can actually get petitions out, and if they get enough people to sign it, they can actually put a law essentially up for people to vote on, as opposed to having legislators vote the law through. Sometimes legislators don't feel comfortable about the chances of a law getting passed through the legislature, and sometimes they don't really want to put their name on the record voting one way or the other for it, so sometimes they'll do what's called a referendum. Well, they'll send it down to the people to vote on. So there are lots of ways in federalism that you and I can get involved. We can even organize with other people with similar interests, form interest groups, and to influence policy. So teachers often are in educators' unions in trying to further what they think is good for education, for example. So there's an increased chance for success in influencing policy because you have so many channels, so many methods by which you can try to achieve some sort of change. So this is going to encourage political participation, which of course is absolutely essential to have a healthy democratic system of government. So federalism is a very useful tool in our style of democracy. Now we get to what they call federalism's professional politicians. Since the 30s, there have been more federal programs set up. Early on in the 30s, they were being set up basically because of the Great Depression and the need to try to produce work for people to do so they could get paid. But a lot of these federal programs also did useful things. This means a large bureaucracy. And the thing about bureaucrats is that they very quickly became fairly good at their jobs and began innovating, coming up with ideas about how to run their particular agencies better and things that could allow them to do a better job. Some people call this kind of bureaucratic leadership a technocracy. It is a situation where you have a government in which decision-making is being done more and more by experts. Oftentimes, decisions are being made about things that, although they affect people, regular folks like you and me don't really understand the implications of what we need to do to make the decision. I don't know about you, but I use computers an awful lot, and yet I really don't understand what they're doing when they make decisions concerning wavelengths, frequencies for broadcasting this or that, what kind of cable they should be using in the ground, in satellite transmissions and stuff like that. That's lost on me. Now, as state and local governments use federal programs, there's also a need on their part to work more closely with federal officials. In fact, there are plenty of cities and plenty of states that have their own political action committees, their own interest groups set up to lobby Congress. Not really political action committees, but interest groups. Now, of course, when you have a federal system where there are powers reserved to the states and they each exercise them their own way, you're going to have differences among the states. This allows for real economic and political differences in a big way. Some states do more to regulate business and pollution and welfare and so on. California has a lot of laws concerning things like that. Oklahoma has much less regulation of things like that. And one of the things that these differences among the states gives us is it allows people to choose to live in a state that follows policies they like. So if you have a certain kind of attitude, a certain kind of bearing, you might want to live in California because of its political system. Or you might want to live in New York because of its political system. Perhaps you want to live in Oklahoma because of its political system. The direction of federalism. There's always been a debate about the proper division of power between the national and state governments, and this started off right off in the beginning with the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Recently, as I pointed out before, the nationalist position is the one that is generally held by Democrats, and the states' rights position is generally held by Republicans. The reason your book says that this is recently what has happened is because they have flipped on this. There for a long time, Democrats argued states' rights positions, and Republicans argued nationalist positions. So this is not some sort of static thing. Democrats have always been one way on this issue, or Republicans have either. And legislation in our country reflects both positions. We don't have a very clear-cut trend in the laws we pass showing one position or the other. We'll have a mix of both. Why? Because we have political leaders kind of in the middle. Then we have Democrats and Republicans who are on either wing. And compromise has to be reached, so we have both trends showing up in our system. Another thing your book talks about is how the ideas about federalism go in cycles. So interest in the nationalist position will peak for a while, and then states' rights position will peak for a while, and so on.